Antinatalism. Everything in life has consequences. Everything, literally everything you do has consequences. Even not doing anything has consequences. There is the sentence that one cannot not communicate. So even if you say nothing, that is a type of communication. Even if you work hard for the things you want, that has consequences. Everything comes at a cost. Now, when people decide to create another human, aka have kids, they automatically expect that person to take responsibility over their own needs, especially when they turn 18. This, however, is something I perceive as unethical and as a social, existential crime. Because the people that created the person, the parents, transferred their own responsibility over their own needs onto the person they created. There are no altruistic reasons to create another person. All reasons to create another person are selfish reasons. Because in order to create a person, you have to want a person. You have to want a kid. And wanting something is inherently a need. The reasons for why people want a child can vary, of course. Some people like the idea, the fantasy of the life of having a child. Some people want to have, in quotation marks, a legacy. Some people want to give their life meaning or purpose, in quotation marks, even though it's not true that a child gives you purpose. It means you have an obligation to take care for someone. But that is a false, artificially created, in quotation marks, purpose. Some people want kids because they want someone to take care of them when they are older, even though that's not something that children are obligated to do. Some people want children to guide them, look up to them, and love them and unconditionally, etc. Some people are just bored in life. Some people want to save their relationship. So the reasons why people want a child, another human, their own, in quotation marks, human, varies. Oh, and I must add, some people have kids because they want to please society's or their own parents' expectations. So the reasons may vary. However, all those reasons are not a justification for creating another person. Because if you create another person, you're automatically trying to satisfy your needs, your psychological needs, your philosophical needs, your emotional needs, etc. And so by the creation of another person, you give away the responsibility for taking care of those needs by yourself. So, if you want to have kids because you want love, then you should not create a person, but you should try to work on yourself to be loved by people that already exist. If you want a child because you want to leave behind some kind of legacy, you should work to leave your own legacy behind that you created, which isn't another person, but something of content. You should write a book or make a movie or invent something, or I don't know, whatever it is. If you feel lonely and that's why you want to have kids, you should try to build stable, healthy friendships. If you want to please society or your family or whoever is putting pressure on you to have kids because they say that you're somehow obligated to have them, you should try to work on yourself to distance yourself from the expectations of society and learn to psychologically be okay with people not being pleased by you and how you live your life. If you want to have kids because you like the idea of a life with kids, you should try to learn to understand that you cannot create kids to fulfill that fantasy of yours because it's way too expensive. Because that person that you're creating has needs and is sensitive and can suffer in life and is automatically at risk of all things that could happen in life. And that is a price that is too expensive because you can never guarantee the well-being of your child, and you cannot excuse putting your child at risk of life because everyone or most other people do that, and because that's what nature makes most living beings do. That is an excuse that is not valid. And if you want to have kids because you want a mini-me, You should try to learn to understand how narcissistic that reason is and that it's not an appropriate reason. There are no appropriate reasons to have kids, because whatever reasons you come up with, they all have something to do with you and what you want. And instead of trying to get that through another way, you're creating another life, which inherently is a kind of slavery. If you have kids because you want to give your life, in quotation marks, purpose, and then your child is your purpose slave. It's an instrumentalization of another person. Having kids is automatically an instrumentalization. And instrumentalizing another person is unethical. It's not okay. And it's absolutely immature. Wanting kids is a type of pedophilia. It's not sexual pedophilia. It is platonic pedophilia. But that doesn't mean that it's okay. That person that you would create is a stranger, even if you spend time with that person and they know you since birth. That doesn't mean that you were entitled to creating them. Because due to evolution, there is an automatic program, a social program that infants and children of other people will always, or in most cases, automatically have an attachment to their own parents. They will have a dependence because that is the setup of our brains, because infants and kids do depend on their parents for their survival. It is a survival program that is automatically installed into the brain of the person you're creating. And that is manipulative. Creating someone because you know that they're going to depend on you because they have no other choice. And especially since it takes time for them to become an adult and develop the mental and physical, etc. resources to no longer depend on you. It's unethical to ignore that they have been set up by you, by nature, and by you to depend on you. You're exploiting that automatic dependency. And people who have kids should be ashamed of themselves. You might now be thinking that I am very offensive and very critical. I'm criticizing something that is one of the most normal things in life or about life, procreation. However, thinking that someone cannot criticize it because it is the common thing is a naturalistic fallacy. Just because it's normal, just because it's common, just because it's natural, doesn't mean it is okay / ethical. And just because it may offend you and hurt your feelings that I am criticizing this so intensely, doesn't mean that the points I'm making aren't right. The points I'm making are logically, reasonably right. And your feelings of being offended don't make you a victim of this reasoning. You're not entitled to have kids. And that is really important to understand, and something that the majority of humans are not aware of. But just because they're not aware of it doesn't mean it isn't true. It is true that people are not entitled to creating another living being. Because if you create another being, another human, another living being, that automatically means that you think you are entitled to that living being, even if it is just existentially. But that's not true. You are not entitled to creating another living being. Why are you not entitled to creating another living being? Because it isn't you. You're not creating yourself, you're creating someone else, and your freedom stops when it's someone else. Now, I could go on and on and on with arguing for this or about this, but I think I've already mentioned the most important points, and I know my tone of voice is very strict. I sound very strict, but that is very justified because creating another living being is a very, very serious thing, very serious topic. It's very serious that people instrumentalize other living beings. They create other living beings to instrumentalize them. And therefore, of course, I talk very strictly about it. Oh, and one more argument before I forget it. Creating another person, creating a person that at first is an infant and then a child, is unethical also because it's an automatic power imbalance. Infants, toddlers, children, teenagers are automatically in a relationship with their parents that has a clear, massive power imbalance. And that is absolutely unethical because no one can give their consent to being created. The parents created the person without the person's consent. the person did not consent to being in such a power imbalanced relationship, to live with such dependency on the parents. All right. Thank you for listening. And I really hope that if you are thinking about having kids, that this could inspire you to consider not creating another living being. You can still try to adopt, even though that still includes that another child is dependent on you. At least you didn't create them, and you're just taking care of someone who has already been created, and someone who needs someone to take care of them because they are still dependent. And if you can't adopt, you can still try to take care of other people, adults that already exist. There are so many adults who still need someone to care for them. You can try to take care of yourself, or you can try to be helpful in other ways. There are so many ways to take care of someone, of others in need. You can try to fight for animal rights, etc. All right, I think that's about it for now. And thank you again for listening.